Comics are stupid.
No Harry Potter movie is good.
And you're like, give me the Snyder Cut. Oh, sorry, just walk in front of you here. Gonna put my popcorn down. Oh, sorry, gotta put this here.
Universal needs to sue Sony.
Hey, I'm an idiot. I was fired from Fox. Let me go.
I'd like actually to see Venom just crush Spider-Man.
All right.
Hello, everyone. We're back for episode 15 of the series, and we're joined by a very special guest, as, again, we always are, Daniel Bekerman. How are you doing?
I'm okay. How are
Doing
you?
well. So, I have to ask you this question just because it's something we ask everybody. Do you like superheroes?
What a good but impossible to answer question, because I can only answer it with questions. Do you mean which superhero? Do I like all superheroes? Do I like superheroes in general?
In general.
Jesus. Do I like them? On the balance, okay, so I'm talking to you right now from my cottage, where I read a billion comic books when I was adolescent. I certainly liked superheroes then. I am 45 years old now, and not particularly interested in superheroes. In fact, by and large, I'm quite annoyed by how omnipresent in our society they are. So I guess the me sitting here now would be a no. The me sitting here 32 years ago would be a yes. I think that's the best answer I can give.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair. And it's better than just a no altogether. So,
Yeah.
Now, how did you kind of get into the film industry? Like, what was your kind of path?
I want to expand on the superhero conversation.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm like, can I?
Go ahead.
Mostly, I think they are a symptom of a sick and desperate society. The fact that superheroes are so omnipresent in our culture is a symptom of how sick and desperate our society is, because we can't celebrate the extraordinary things that we do, or that the people we know in our community do, or even the people that we don't know but they're in our society, the real people. We can't celebrate that because we have so little faith in our current society. We need to, the only thing that actually feels worth celebrating to us is this fantasy of impossible superheroes who can do things that none of us can, because we have a low self-worth collectively. And so we can only imagine someone being worth celebrating if they're nothing like the reality that is us. And that's super sad.
Was that the case for all fictional characters then?
No. It's a trend. Superheroes are a trend within the larger fictional world to create people or characters that we could never ever be.
But isn't that the case of
And
any
that's where the
fictional
sick part
like hero character?
No, there's plenty of fictional characters that we could be. We could never be. I could never be whatever lame spandex donned character you want to reference. I could never be that, who's flying over buildings or whatever. I could never be that, but I could easily be, someone in a fictional story. I could be someone in Coda. I could be someone in, there's a whole range of fictional characters. Some of them it's plausible that we could be them or be like them. Superheroes.
Could you be Indiana Jones?
It's a little closer. It's a little closer.
Well, the same way, I guess you could be Batman.
Yeah, Batman's a little more realistic than the superheroes who fly across the universe and blow up solar systems and stuff. So I do actually slightly prefer Batman, partly for that reason.
Okay, that's fair.
And I'm not going to pretend to be a total superhero snob. Like, you know, that one Wolverine movie was
Logan?
pretty good. Logan was pretty good. Again, grounded, not super fantastical. Not that I don't like any fantasy, but yeah, Logan was good. I think the Christopher Nolan Batmans were, the first one was pretty good. The second one and third ones were kind of good but overwrought. And I'm not like a blanket, I hate all superhero movies. And like I said, I used to love superheroes when I was a preteen.
That's fair.
But I am an adult now.
Okay, that's fair. Would you say the same thing for Star Wars? Is that the same kind of thing for like Star Wars, Star Trek, and those kind of space movies?
Yeah, I mean, I loved Star Wars when I was a kid, and I still kind of enjoy it. And ultimately, I don't really care. What bothers me is the obsession with it, like the omnipresent obsession with it, where it's like there's nothing else worth talking about in culture other than these characters that are, you know, there's a place for them. I'm not saying there shouldn't be any superheroes anywhere, anytime. Mostly the place is for preteens, in my opinion. And then you can also use it to say something interesting and more mature, like Logan. You can use the motif, but to be as omnipresent, to have so much obsession that exists, as much obsession as exists, seems like something's a little off about it to me.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how long, if it is a trend, it'll pass. So let's see. It'll be interesting to see how long.
I don't think it will
$1
pass.
billion movies.
I don't think it'll pass because I think our society's getting more and more desperate, and I think that the obsession with characters we could never be will increase as our desperation increases. So, not a super peachy rosy opinion there, but yeah.
It's an interesting perspective, though. So, talking a little bit about your kind of rise into the film industry, how did you get into the film industry? What was your path?
I did love, I would say it was mainly my mother that got me interested in movies, and she had really good taste in movies and suggested I watch movies by Ingmar Bergman and David Lynch. Went also around that preteen time when I was reading comics, I was also watching Bergman movies. And so I got interested in I saw this like possibility of strange new worlds and insights coming from the world of cinema. So I got interested in it. Yeah, at a young age. And then there was a family friend who was an actor who helped get me on some sets as a teenager. So I did actually work a bit in film as a teenager. And then, but that wasn't super serious in terms of like starting a career or anything. Then I did other stuff. In my 20s, for a little while, I actually earned an honest living before getting into film. And, did things like fruit picking and tree planting and working in kitchens and stuff like that. But I did hit a wall where I was like, oh, I need to do something with my life that I actually find fulfilling. So I did my interest in film didn't stop from when I was, preteen. And so I thought, I should explore the film business. So I basically sent a resume to every single production company. Like there was a list, A, B, C, like AAA films to ZZZ films. And this was a little bit before, there was definitely email, but there was also faxes. So I faxed a lot of CVs to every single one of those AAA to ZZZ movie companies. And only one responded and offered me the opportunity to work for free on music videos. And So I worked for free sweeping floors and so on some music video sets for a while. So that was the beginning.
And then why did you decide to produce, like what was the reason you decided to become a producer and start a production company and all that stuff?
So fast forward, I did music video stuff. Like I pretty quickly started production managing, then producing music videos within a year or so of starting, because it's kind of easy. Because if you try, you will be able to do that. Because it's a pretty chaotic part of the industry that, you know, if you put some effort in, you can move pretty quickly through it. And so I was doing music videos for a few years, like 3-4 years, and but I hit a wall where I was, you know, like producing music videos is not very interesting, really. You're basically just ordering gear and so on, which there's, you know, it's honest living, but you know, I wasn't fulfilled by it because I did go to, you know, fine art school and stuff. Not that that's really that important, but I was interested in film from a sort of purist sense of like the art. You know, I was interested in the creativity, the creative potential of the medium, and so just ordering gear for music videos wasn't very fulfilling, and so I basically started putting out feelers, trying to work on features, because I thought features might be more interesting than music videos, and so I did get some work on some features, production managing, and things like that. Just started developing that skill set. And then I did find that there was a level of creativity I was involved with on features that was fulfilling. And especially when I started developing scripts with people and looking for ideas. And then this world kind of opened up to me of realizing any idea I could if it was interesting, I could potentially pursue it and make a movie, make a story out of it. We're working with people, working with writers and directors, and I could be a part of that, and that was interesting.
So, what was the first film you kind of the first feature film you produced?
The first feature film I produced was called "You Are Here." And it was it was a director named Daniel Coburn, who I'm still good friends with and still collaborate with. And he came from the video art world, and he wanted to do a feature and brought it to me. Someone connected us, and he asked if I wanted to produce it. You know, I didn't really know what producing meant at that time, and basically I started to get into the script with him and started to play around with the ideas, and it was very unconventional narrative. It's very experimental. In some ways, what you might think of as a typical kind of like first feature, in that it's like its artistic ambitions are like through the roof, and the financial means were like, you know, below the floor, and so we did the best we could, and it actually turned out to be something that we're, I think, both still really proud of, and it ended up premiering at major festivals, including Locarno and TIFF, and actually got distribution despite being extremely experimental and sort of unconventional and frankly uncommercial. And but it got out there. It got really good reviews, like possibly the best reviews of that year in Toronto. Just sort of 5 stars, 4 stars, and really a lot of people we really respect really like the film. So, you know, in many ways I'm fortunate that I got connected with Daniel, and my first feature ended up being well regarded, because that's kind of what you need to do the next thing, take the next step. And so I had a good first step, which is probably pretty key, and I probably take more credit for that than I should, in terms of it's pretty easy to say, oh, I did that, and then all the other movies came to me, and it sort of came easily. But if I had not had that success, if I had not had such a good collaborator in Daniel on my first feature, who knows what would have happened.
And
so make your first one good.
And so you talk about producing. Now, I think a lot of people kind of have misconception about what that actually means. So what is producing?
Oh my God, we do we do not have time. Well, okay, look, it can be so many things. The credit itself, to me, I don't care about the credit. Like, it doesn't mean that much because the only people who really care about the credits are other producers. And so what the actual work is can be also, pretty hard to pin down, but it definitely can include one or all of creative development. So you're sourcing stories, like you see a book and you option the book and you find a writer and director to adapt the book, and you find the money to pay them, and you really are deeply involved in that creative adaptation of the book or of just an idea you develop. It doesn't have to be from source material, of course, and so you could just be deep in that creative space of developing a story, and that's a really key part of producing. And also key is then finding a way for that story to get financed, and so financing is a big part of producing. And there's a million ways to finance things, all of them hard and mostly painful. And then there is the sort of oversight of the whole production process, putting a team together. Some of that crosses over into the line producing space when you're actually doing the physical production, but there's also a role for a producer in that. And then there's a role for a producer in the casting. That's a pivotal, important thing for most projects, is how they're cast, because that has a lot to do with how they're financed. So navigating the casting process is a really important part of producing. Then managing the distribution and release of the project, although generally that's in the hands of a distributor, and most of the power is out of the producer's hands at that point. But still, doing whatever you can to manage it in that context is also key. So those are all pieces of producing, and you could have a person who just does one little piece of that, and they're a producer. And if it's important enough, that's totally cool, and that's fine. If it's it could be a producer who can just land an actor, or a producer who can just land a piece of financing, and those are important enough that those credits to me are well deserved. And then there's producers who kind of do all of that stuff, and unfortunately I'm one of those, which is hard to do all of it.
And so kind of going back to your childhood, something I want to touch on again is so you talked about specific directors, but what was your favorite kind of movie growing up?
I think the first movie I saw in a theater was the King Arthur animated movie, and I think I thought it was kind of crappy. But when I was growing up, I was pretty typical. I did love Star Wars. I loved, Ghostbusters. I loved all those movies. And then I did start to get possibly some more sophisticated taste when like I mentioned, when I was started to watch stuff that was influenced from my mom, things that she suggested, like Bergman and Lynch and Kubrick. I started watching Kubrick when I was pretty young. Definitely loved Space Odyssey. That was an early film that I watched again and again. Then I got into Goodfellas and that world, and started learning about Kurosawa and non-North American masters, and nothing that unusual really for a nerdy film person.
I can completely relate to that. So how do you choose your projects, I guess?
How do I choose them? That's like a good question, but also really hard to answer. I mean, there's a technical process where in my company we have a team of people. We get a lot of submissions. We probably get sometimes as many as 10 submissions a day. I'm not lying or kidding. Like, we get a lot of submissions from various places. And so we have, because it's so much, we have a process that we review all of them. We do, we at least take a look at all of them. And, depending on the circumstance, we'll either pursue, do a more extensive review and discussion internally in the company. So there's sort of a technical procedure for picking the project. But in terms of why I specifically, and I have partners, and, so the decisions are generally joint decisions. But why do I personally choose a project? What makes me choose a project? It is pretty personal. It's pretty non-rationality based. It's instinctual. It's gut. It's excitement. All of those things are the primary movers that make that decision. I mean, it's got to be a balance ultimately of creative excitement that I feel about it, mixed with a business case for the project that I can see or imagine. So yeah, I mean, for me, I'm most interested in stories that have a element of originality to them, and originality is a highly debatable concept, but even stories that are clearly influenced by something or based on something real or whatever, that doesn't necessarily negate originality, because to me the way you do something can be as important in terms of originality as what you're doing. And so there's a lot of ways to achieve there's ways that can distinguish whether a story is fresh or stale. There's a lot of things that can influence that. It's not just one thing. And that's ultimately what the biggest single thing is the story fresh / original / inspired, or is it predictable, overly derivative, boringly derivative, or what? Where is it on that spectrum is kind of my main thing, because it can be any genre. I definitely am not only interested in one genre. I can get excited about really any kind of story. I tend to like stories that intelligently challenge my own preconceptions of things. So I have pretty strong political opinions and worldview and all of that, but I don't actually want something that just sort of goes along with that. I'm super intrigued if something challenges those assumptions that I have as a person, but not in a dumb, predictable way.
Has there ever been a film that you were very nervous about, I guess, when you decided to go forward with it?
Yeah, I mean, most of them in one way or another. I'm nervous. Your eyes would have to be closed to be not nervous, because there's a lot of risk involved in making things. There's a lot of financial risk. There's a lot of, will it work? Will it not work? Will it, when you take it on, will it even get made? Or even as you're making it, can we finish it properly? Or are we going to have some obstacle? There's all kinds of risks. So I'm always nervous. And then there's other kinds of risks or other things to make you nervous. I was a little nervous about The Witch, because when I read the script, it was very dark, and I'm not opposed to telling dark stories at all. I'm probably more lean towards that, but still, it was so dark that I was wondering, is this too dark for me? A little bit. Was wondering that. There were some scenes, if you've seen the movie, especially early on, that I gave me pause. But I think what that really was, but that made me really ask the question that is an important question, which is, does it earn it? Does it justify itself? Does it? Is there enough substance that justifies that darkness? Is there meaning in it that gives that darkness a place, a place in our world that it deserves? And I ultimately asked myself that, and I thought, yeah, it does actually. And then turns out that Robert, the writer director, is a serious artist, and it very much did earn that, all of those things. But yeah, I had that moment of pause, and I have a moment of pause like that on most things, and actually it's probably a good sign.
So now when you're not producing, you're not doing your job, what do you do for fun?
Oh, I love that innocence of that question. as if I have time for fun. No, I do. I mean, like, I like baseball. I like reading books that aren't just for work. But honestly, I'll get personal here. Like, as I've gotten older, I have, had the fairly predictable coming down to earth where I realize, oh shit, I'm not immortal, and I have to make the most of all the people, like all the relationships I have, and I have to appreciate people and just the ordinary things in life, so that's what I try to spend my free time on. I'm not like necessarily like a hobby guy, but I'm trying to appreciate those things in life.
So are you still like a film buff in the sense that you watch movies and you enjoy watching movies outside of like for work purposes?
Yeah, when I can. But usually when I finish work, I fall straight asleep. But no, I do. I mean, I think I'm pretty typical in the sense that I often will switch on one or another streaming service and watch a series. I'm watch a lot of series these days. There's just such fantastic stuff in that world that I just tend to get sucked in, just like millions of people around the world do.
What series are you watching right now?
I just finished watching Severance, which is great. It's great. A lot of fun. And I did a movie with Christopher Walken, and it's very fun to watch him in Severance. His range actually is incredible, because everyone does like a Christopher Walken impression and so on, and thinks of him as being so specific, but you can actually miss that he actually has quite a range. Like, the role he did in the movie I did with him could not be more different than his role in Severance, and he's hilarious in Severance as well, like truly hilarious. So yeah, I really like that. And what else? I have been watching. You know what? I've been trying to watch Ted Lasso because I don't think I know a single person who doesn't like that show. Like, not a single person. And I've been trying to watch it. And often I watch stuff late as I'm going to sleep, and I fall asleep. So I watch like a quarter of an episode of something, then I have to try to revisit. That might have something to do with it. But I just can't get into it. Like, to me, it's like, seems so cutesy, and it's like, oh, aren't Americans and British people different in quirky ways? And that kind of turns my stomach. I'm not interested in that. And yet I respect tons of people who like the show. So I keep trying to give it a chance, and I'm just sort of inching my way through a few episodes, and I still don't understand what people like so much about it. But I'm starting to feel like seriously left out, because I mean, I know that there's some things that I like that I won't like, and vice versa, obviously. But when it's like literally everybody likes it and I don't, I mean, like the finger is pointed at me, like there's something I'm missing. But I can't see it. I can't see it with that show.
See, I can completely relate to that in the sense that I haven't even tried to watch it. I just keep putting it off. I'm like, I'll watch it eventually, and I just have never even tried to get into it. And everyone I know, everybody says it's like the greatest thing ever.
All right.
Like, yeah, I'll get to it.
Oh,
eventually.
so you're the other person.
Yeah.
We're the two people. Look at us.
The only two people on the planet. So, how do you deal with kind of, or what's your kind of view on movie criticism in general, like especially on social media?
Oh, well, it's sad. To me, it's pretty sad because actually movie criticism, I think, is a really, like, can be a really amazing, beautiful kind of thing. Like, when I was in my teens and just getting into, like, some more sophisticated movies and stuff, it was like, other than my mother, it was like film critics who were leading the way for me. Like, there was a film critic for the Globe and Mail in Toronto named Jay Scott, who a lot of people know. And he was, what I loved about him is, like, I basically, whatever movie he gave 3 or 4 stars to, I would go see. And I never regretted seeing any of those movies. Like, there was always something interesting. They weren't always fantastic, but there was always something interesting enough that made it worth seeing. And he always just had an interesting insight, or but there was a personalness to him. I think most critics, probably through history, but especially today, are trying to, like, do this very boring thing of being objective, which doesn't exist. I mean, this is another conversation, but that doesn't exist. So they're on this really boring, predictable quest, which I know the answer to is you're not going to get there because there's no objectivity. But it's this attempt to be objective, which is really banal. And so critics who are more personal, who will go with their own, who will trust their own subjectivity in the review, is way more interesting. And Jay Scott was one of those. Obviously, Pauline Kael, and there are people around now too who do it, but it's a kind of a subordinated art form is film criticism, I think, and it's also a little bit suffering from, like, the same thing that the world is generally suffering from, which is like this cataclysmic shift in whose voices get heard, which is mostly, I think, a good thing. But when there's, like, now probably about 400 million film critics of one type or another, it makes it hard for the people who are truly dedicated to it to rise out of that noise. Overall, I'm glad everyone has a voice now, or potentially has a voice now. But there's some casualties, there's some collateral damage, and I think film criticism is one of them.
So what about, like, not necessarily professional criticism, but more what the internet likes to do, where they just kind of, say things on Twitter for the sake of it because they can?
Yeah, I think that goes into, like, what I just said, which is, like, basically it's exciting that everyone can have their opinions distributed in every corner of the earth, and but there is something, I think, going on that is a shadow to that positive side. There's a shadow to that, which is that, what happens when everyone can freely and easily disseminate their opinions? Maybe they stop listening to they just get super addicted to giving their opinions and forget how to listen. Maybe they, maybe it creates a deterioration of structures of collective understanding of what's good and bad, because there's no sense of leadership or authority in the world of opinion, which again has a good and bad side to it. Stuff like that.
Now, how often will you go on Twitter or any social media, I guess, and like, look at what people are saying about your movies?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's, I guess, two sides to how I care about that. One is I care about it in a sort of practical financial level, where like if everyone hates the movie, then I'll probably like lose money, and people I'm working with will probably lose money, and that's not good. So there's that side to it. Then there's a personal side to it where like my feelings might be hurt if I'm really close to the movie. If I really put a lot of myself into it and I really care and I think it's fantastic and exciting, then my feelings might be hurt if people don't like it, and they say particularly mean things about it online. Honestly, I'm insanely busy, as most people in the industry are, though, and I just don't have that much time to look at that stuff, and it's probably going to be depressing, so I kind of don't look at it that much, and also don't really find most of those opinions credible, maybe for some of the reasons we were talking about before. So I'll partly don't want to get depressed, partly don't care, but I'll look at some, for sure.
Well, that's a good answer. I mean, that's like, yeah, it's not a good, that can be a very bad place sometimes. Now, you're working on a lot of interesting things. So what are you kind of working on now?
So, it's sort of a boring thing to say, but I probably have to be a little sneaky and confidential about a lot of the stuff I'm working on now. I'm working on a ton of exciting stuff that's going to blow your mind when you see it. I can tell you that. I can tell you I'm working with some incredible creative people. What can I tell you? I mean, I think one thing I can tell you about that is out now, that I hope you and everyone goes and sees, is a movie called Slashback, which is a movie that is directed by a woman named Nyla Nuksuk, who is a friend of mine who pitched me this story about aliens invading an Inuit community in the Arctic, and the teenage girls from that community fighting the aliens. And so we went ahead and made that movie, and we're really happy with it, and it's out in the world now in Canada, and it's going to be out in the US later in the year, I believe. So that's a really special movie that I think everyone should see. And I've got, like 7 or 8 things in the pipe that'll be coming before long. Yeah.
So we're gonna play a little bit of a game, because I know I'm gonna have to try a little bit to get some information out of you. So I'm gonna name some projects that you have upcoming, and you can give me a short summary of the projects. Okay.
Okay. Ivy is a movie that we made with Netflix, and it is actually has a new title. I can tell you that. It's called House/Wife, and that movie will be coming out at some point in the near future.
A little bit of plot summary.
I can't. Sorry, I've got to leave the marketing people to do the work that they'll do.
Okay, what about the friendship game? This was actually one of the ones I found the most interesting when I was reading about it.
Yeah. So that one is we're in post-production on that one right now, and I'm very excited for humans to watch it with their eyes open. And I think that it's quite an original story in the horror space. And the actors are incredible. I learned about how people in their early 20s talk while making it. The lead is Peyton List, who's incredible. And the director is Scooter Corkle, who I've been really, excited about as a director for a few years because I saw some shorts that he'd done. And I think he has an incredible control of tone. And I think he has some magic with actors. And actors reveal very interesting things on camera when he's working with them. And I think he's talented. So I don't want to say too much more than that. But it's a cool one and a freaky one.
Now, what about Let's Do This?
Let's Do This is too early to talk
Too
about.
early?
Sorry.
What about Coming Soon?
A little too early to talk about.
Love Me?
This
Too early?
is hilarious. Yeah, I shouldn't say. Yeah.
Okay. It's all good. I was just kind of listing some of the ones to see what I could get out of you, and I got some interesting things, so it's all good.
Cool.
Now, I'm going to now, it's 2 questions.
Mm-hmm.
We asked these to everybody, again, but I have to hear what you have to say on this. So I'm going to make you tap into, the creative part of your brain a little bit, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So if I were to say, I'm going to give you unlimited money and you can create whatever project you want,
Mm-hmm.
what would the genre be and who would the 2 main stars be?
Okay. So I love that you asked this because I haven't been asked it before. It's interesting. First of all, genre, I think I ultimately really am interested in stories that have a lot to say about the human condition, and I think the future dystopia genre is something that is expensive to do. So I'm partly answering because of that part of your question. If you had unlimited money, so I think I would be interested in a future dystopic story that has something interesting to say, and who would star in it. I mean, there you're gonna again get that split part of my brain, the 2 kinds of producing, the creative and the financing and the logistical and brass tacks parts of producing. Obviously, Brad Pitt and I don't know, someone else. That's the financing part of my brain. The creative part of my brain, who would I want in it? I mean, there's actors who I have always just been fascinated by, who I think are incredible. I mean, who wouldn't want to do something with Daniel Day-Lewis, But for some reason, the actor that's popping into my head is Crispin Glover. I would love to work with that weirdo. And who else? I don't know. It's interesting, but those are my answers for now.
And what advice do you have for young people who kind of want to get into the industry?
You've got to find your own way of seeing it. I think a lot of people hear all this advice, like maybe the advice I'm giving right now, and they try to approximate what they think what the proper way to do it is, or what the, tried and true way to do it is, what that has worked for people in the past. And what a book says you should do, or what a film school says you should do. And maybe sometimes those things can sort of work, but my instinct and what has been borne out by my own path is that it's actually a lot more about being in tune with your own convictions, your own point of view, and being as true to that as you can possibly be. And that sounds very sort of idealistic and airy-fairy, but it is what has worked for me. And I think that's where you can find confidence. And confidence is the most important thing. I don't think many people would argue with that. You can't get to confidence by doing what you think other people would say you should do. At least I can't get to confidence that way. So that's why I think it has worked for me. And it's also a lot more interesting and fun when you're trying to be true to yourself. So possibly the most predictable answer in the world, be true to yourself. But I think it is a truism.
Well, I think that's the perfect way to end this. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate, I know you're so busy, so I appreciate you taking time to come on today.
No worries.
And we'll have to do this again when you can talk more about the movies that you're making.
Thanks. And good for you doing this thing.
Okay.
Right on.
Thank you. And everyone watching, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff that people tell you to do. And do you want to promote anything? Your social media handle is underneath your name right now on the screen. So.
Oh, exciting. Yeah, go see Slashback. That's the one. Slashback.
Perfect.
Or rent it, or see it however you can.
Perfect. And that's us. And I see everyone who's watching next week for the next episode. Bye.